cortisol disrupting foods, why should we care?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's the answer to that ultimately is if you like your sleep, if you like your heart function, if you like having regular blood pressure and blood sugar, and even if you like having good bone mineral density, you should probably care about your cortisol.
Well, I'm fired up today. Dr. Ron Dummar with the Be Well Now podcast. I'm a friend and patient here at the clinic of Be Well Now podcast. Before Be Well Now podcast, there was Community Health and Wellness.
Yes, there was.
There was.
Community Health and Wellness did exist before that. They're quite synonymous now. That's for certain.
No, it's fun talking to you. But you treat patients for all different conditions. You're a functional medicine doctor, Chinese medicine. Like what is your background? Why should we care about what you have to say in terms of cortisol?
My background is in physical medicine and chiropractic and Chinese medicine. I study those together actually at the same time, 5.5 year-round program. It was quite intense. I like to say I did my physical medicine chiropractic by day and my Chinese medicine by night. And what I learned a lot through that process is that by studying the Eastern approach and the Western approach simultaneously and doing all my basic medical requirements and basic sciences and things like that too, medical sciences, I realized that we were just we're using different words or terms like qi and yin and yang and all these different stagnation, right, to describe essentially the same body dysfunctions. And so when you have the same body, we're both looking at the same body, you're describing it from different verbiage. Essentially, you're describing the same dysfunction. And so then it helped me to really integrate the two, Eastern and Western philosophies. And that probably set the stage for what has made our practice so diverse here. We are so including and encompassing. If a modality I think makes sense from a physiological nature and I think is going to contribute to the overall health of our patient, I'll include it. I'll integrate it into our processes if I think it's going to add clinical efficacious effect for our patients.
Okay, so a little bit of your background. Now, I want to have a good life. Sounds like cortisol is important based on what you said earlier. Let's talk about these, what foods that spike cortisol, or what is the goal of today's podcast? What did you want to tell the people? Yeah,
well, so many people in the United States, U.S. population, our culture right now, it's high performance, high demand. Every job position that I'm in, my patients all the time, it's like, what's causing stress for you? It's like, well, my job, I have family stress, I have all sorts of things. Everything's stressful, right? And when we have stress, it spikes our cortisol, because cortisol is designed to help us deal with stress. But cortisol is secreted and released by the adrenals, and it requires a significant amount of certain nutrients to support that production. And so if we are deficient in certain nutrients, we're not going to be able to support our cortisol production. We're not going to be able to manage stressors well enough. And there are certain therapeutics or treatments like acupuncture, like meditation, like Tai Chi, like yoga, that actually help with regulating cortisol secretion and production as well. But cortisol will help. It can be a benefit because it helps with your metabolism. It helps with your breaking down of fats, of proteins, of carbohydrates, right? So if you're in a high stress environment, all of a sudden you're not breaking your food down well enough. So your digestion is completely off. Your bowel, 95% of people are metabolically unwell in the United States. Do you think stress plays a role with it? Do you think cortisol spiking plays a role with that? 100%. So what are the things that we're doing in our life? How are we implementing stress relieving and cortisol regulating foods and dietary habits and lifestyle habits into our routines? Most of us are not. We're just stressing ourselves out to the max. We're picking up that caffeinated drink in the morning, which again spikes cortisol release. We're trying to wake ourselves up in the morning because our cortisol is already dysregulated. Okay, so all of these things become a problem, and we need to regulate cortisol so that we can sleep appropriately. The sun setting and the sun rising is actually a sign to the body to secrete or stop the secretion of cortisol. Again, cortisol is going to help us to focus, to be up, alert, awake, and to essentially metabolize our foods, right? So when do I do that? I need to do that throughout the day. So the waking hours, I need to have cortisol up and secreted for me. As I get to the more sun setting, right, the twilight hours, the cortisol starts dropping.
Yep.
I get tired. Boom, I go to sleep. I sleep all night. I wake up feeling rested because in the morning the sun starts to come up. As the sun permeates and light enters into my room, it enters my skin, and boom, my cortisol surges. My eyes open up and I'm ready to go for the day. Most people, I think, wake up feeling tired, feeling fatigued. And so what do they go for? They go for that adrenal kidney stimulant that's going to help the body kick that cortisol out, even though it's not ready to do so, right?
Got it.
It doesn't have the sufficient nutrients to properly do it, or at least not to do it to the right amount at that time. And so we give it a stimulant, which then overtaxes it, overburdens it. And so now we're trying to play catch up. Okay. So it helps with blood sugar regulation. It helps with bone mineral density. It helps with our heart rhythms.
What does?
Cortisol
Okay.
regulation.
Cortisol regulation.
Yes.
So what does that mean? Like, we're talking about cortisol spiking.
Yeah,
I
so
guess I'm
there's
just
a
looking for
regular
news you can use here. Like, I understand cortisol spikes too much when I drink too much coffee and I'm
For sure.
overstimulated and
Yes.
stressed.
So there's a regular ebb and flow to cortisol. We want it to be dipping in the evening. We want it to be raising and spiking in the morning so that we feel alert and awake. What cortisol will actually do as well is it will push sugar into the blood. Okay. Now imagine you have diabetes or you have some sort of insulin resistance related issue and you're pushing sugar into the blood, and if you're not able to get that into the cell, then your body's not able to produce the energy to properly metabolize your food and to metabolize the things that you're going to need for that day. So breaking down proteins, fats, your digestion becomes a problem. Okay. So there is a whole lot of physiological processes in the body that are actually quite dependent on the proper regulation of cortisol. So let's talk about foods that are going to disrupt or wreak havoc on cortisol.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
Let's do it. Because now I get it. I'm like, I want my cortisol to be regulated so that the whole system of my body can work better.
Your immune system.
Yeah.
Right? But one of the things I say to patients a lot is acupuncture helps in so many ways. It stimulates the nervous system. It influences the autonomic nervous system. Well, any immune pathogenic factor response that we have by the body is actually mitigated by your autonomic nervous system, your fight or flight response, right? So that is also partially regulated by cortisol. So cortisol will help the body to properly confront a pathogenic factor or front an immune response. So we can develop, if we have high levels of cortisol, high levels of stress over a long period of time, what's going to happen is we develop an immune suppressed state. So at some point, our immune system's just not functioning well enough. And honestly, some people in this state think that they're healthy. They're like, man, I haven't been sick for years. And they're under a lot of stress and they're really pressing, pushing, going. And they don't realize that they're actually in immunosuppressed state, which means that they're not actually detecting the pathogens that are in their body as well as they should, so that they're not cleaning their body out as efficiently. So we don't want to be in an immune suppressed state. So how do we do this? One of the things that we know for certain that decreases or suppresses the immune system is highly processed, refined sugar.
Okay, what is that?
Okay, like corn syrup, for instance. High fructose corn syrup will suppress the immune response. If we have candies, cookies, cakes, donuts, pastries, pies, all of those processed foods like that are going to actually potentially suppress your immune system. Okay, but we know that sugar, the refined, processed, highly processed sugar, actually does immediately. We know it suppresses your immune system just consuming it. So eating sugar, eating a shake, right? Drinking a shake. You have let's say you go to a hamburger place and you're like, oh, okay, I want to try the healthy option. I'm going to have a protein, a protein style hamburger. So they'll just wrap it in lettuce and you're like, I'm doing really good. And then you're like, but I'm going to get the shake or the malt, right? And now you're just jamming all this processed sugar, highly processed sugar into your body. You did a really great thing by having that, maybe putting the carb away with the highly refined bun, but now you just shoved it all into your body through consuming that shake. So you have to be really careful with refined sugars, high fructose corn syrup, because again, it's going to cause a spike in your blood sugar. And then because it's so refined, it gets consumed so quickly and then you'll crash. So the cortisol is triggered. It's released in response to that.
To the crash?
Mm-hmm.
Why? It's stressed out?
Yeah, because there's stress, a significant amount of stress placed on the body from the spike and then the crash. And then it's like you have to try to undergo or work your way through that stress now too. So that's a cortisol spike waiting to happen right there.
Gotcha.
Okay. Because once cortisol kicks in, then it says, okay, we were riding high on sugar. Now we have to secrete cortisol to try to put more sugar into the blood so that we can actually maintain some semblance of what we thought was a normal state. Okay. The other thing we've already alluded to or talked about is caffeine. Caffeine is something that we have to be very careful with. I've said a number of times to people, caffeine, if you have a demanding day, if you know, okay, I'm going to be doing a lot, I'm going to be very active, I need a little stimulant, there's nothing wrong with having some caffeine. Okay, now maybe having 50 to 100 milligrams of caffeine, that sounds sufficient. Having 300 milligrams of caffeine, right? You're overdoing it. You're going to cause a lot of heart-related issues or disruption in your cardiovascular system, and you need to be really careful, and also the kidneys and the adrenals. So be very, very cautious and careful with the use of caffeine. And one of the other things, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but if you're going to exercise, that is a great time to say, use a stimulant, right? So if you have an exercise or part of your routine throughout the day is to exercise, doing a little stimulant or a little caffeine before that is a good idea because it will actually increase your ability to perform during that workout session. And you're working off and clearing all of that caffeine, all of that stimulant, and you're replacing it with nutrients because you're part of the process of exercising is detoxification. It's autophagy. It allows the body to clear and empty its toxic built up debris, and then to replenish with new nutrients and oxygenation and everything as well. So be careful with caffeine. The other one is, go ahead.
Empty stomach, because I was starting to think, I'm like, I don't have any corn syrup or nasty sugars, but I'll drink a couple cups of black coffee on an empty stomach fasted in the morning, and I'll just get going.
Yes, that's a good.
And I could feel how that might be taxing to the system.
Well, 100%. One of the big things, and thank you for cueing me on that as well.
I had 2 cups this morning.
That's a really important thing, is because essentially when you do it on an empty stomach, it's like you're doing it after a fast. Okay. Now, one of the reasons this is problematic is, first of all, that's the very first thing you're going to introduce to your body, right? After a fast, you want to be thinking if you have some sort of fast period, you need to be introducing something as most nutritious, nutrient dense, and beneficial so the body can take those. It's ripe. It's like ready, reaching. It's got its arms out, ready to take up all these nutrients. And then you get it like a single compound that's just going to crank out energy and dump sugar into the blood. That's what you're doing when you consume it on an empty stomach and then your body looks around like, well, okay, but what else do you have for us? Because we need more than that. That's going to get you through because you'll feel buzzed for a little bit almost. You'll feel like, okay, great, I'm doing good. Yeah, but you don't have any nutrients to sustain that over time. So if you put really good nutrients, vitamins, herbals with that, like in our Lionade we've talked about, you can actually support that process where you're elevating the energy. And when you take or when you take the Lionade, you feel a sustained energy. It's not like a pound.
So there's a description in this video, and we could let people know if they want to find Lionade, they can actually order it online. Kind of a shameless plug there. But I also really like Lionade. I use it. I buy it from you guys. So would that be better to break a fast if I'm not going to eat still for a few more hours in the morning, but I'm looking for a little bit of an energy boost? Lionade v coffee would be better?
You have more vitamins, more minerals. You have more herbals in that Lionade than even just the coffee.
Because then, they say if you drink coffee on an empty stomach and you're fasting, it doesn't break your fast. But then it might, depending on how much it spikes your blood sugar. So it's like, I don't really know if it's breaking my fast or not anyway. Lionade feels like it would definitely, quote unquote, break the fast.
I usually refer, like with teas in a fast, I'll typically say that a coffee or Lionade or a tea, an herbal tea, doesn't break the fast. That's generally how I do it. Obviously, with my herbal teas, there's a variety of different rich compounds and nutrient-dense vitamins and minerals that you're delivering there, and it's actually more of a kind of a food product. So you would think, oh yeah, that's breaking the fast. But again, the reason I'm delivering that and I want it delivered in that empty stomach state is because I want it to take up all of those nutrients immediately into the body and receive it and bring the nutrition to every cell.
And you have a lot of herbal formulas, so like the encouragement would be that on an empty stomach, that's actually a great time to take those.
So usually the people will say, don't take supplements on an empty stomach. Well, okay, that's part of that is because a lot of supplements are not necessarily like food-based. But if you have a food-based supplement, take it on an empty stomach, 100%. Like if you have herbals, if you have plants that you're actually consuming, and it's instead of just like what you'll see on a lot of supplements is vitamin this, mineral, vitamin, right? And it's like, okay, that's just a formula. That is not a food product. But if you have like, okay, ashwagandha, turmeric, these are all food, herbs and plants with multiplicity of compounds that have an intelligence that can deliver to your cells specific actions and give them specific ingredients that are necessary for performing enzymatic activity and all sorts of things, hormone production in the body. So yes, those are very, very good. My herbal formulas, I recommend to people to consume them on an empty stomach is the best way to do it. If you mix it with food, it becomes a totally different formula, right? So all of a sudden, it's not just turmeric and ashwagandha and anyway, I forgot the English name to that one. But it's not just those three herbs. All of a sudden, it's also your celery and your cabbage and your steak, right? And that actually influences or impacts the delivery of the nutrients and compounds to your body in the specific way that you had intended or hoped that it would. Okay? So anyway, alcohol is another one.
Okay. Cortisol disruptor.
Yes. Alcohol is a cortisol disruptor. It affects your sleep. Obviously, anybody who has had alcohol or had too much alcohol realizes how that can really affect or impact your sleep, even your ability to get up the next day and to function. Really, I would say it's more significantly impacted with heavier or frequent use. Doesn't even have to be heavy use, but sometimes even just using it regularly, like, well, every day after my dinner, after my evening meal, I do this, and that's how I go to sleep, right? Some people use it to actually sleep every single night. The regularity of it can eventually impact cortisol regulation. And it actually doesn't, it's interesting because people say, well, yeah, it helps me go to sleep. But the interesting thing about it is that it is a cortisol spiker as well, and it drives sugar into the blood in a way almost equivalent to highly processed, refined high fructose corn syrup sugars, right? So it's sugar into the blood, into the liver, and then you're trying to process that for the next several hours through your liver, and that's really challenging on your body. Right during the times when your body really should be focused on cleaning and cleansing the blood and the cells and making sure that there's no overproduction of sugar within the blood, right? And making sure that there's no toxic chemical buildup, or if there is and it detects it, it's going to clean that out and prepare it for evacuation, right? And for elimination from the body. So that's what we want the liver to be able to be really focused on liver functions. And if we tax it with alcohol, which it specifically does tax the liver, we know that, then we're going to have a more significant impact on our liver health. And we're not really going to be able to reach proper autophagy and detoxification throughout the night, which is what we should do when we sleep. Our body should go through this cleansing process of eliminating toxins and preparing the body for the next day. So,
I love that.
Yeah.
I think we know enough now about alcohol, and people are going to choose to drink it or not, but they hopefully have heard the warnings, not just like, don't drink,
yes.
drive. It's just like, no, like alcohol is kind of a poison, and if you want to drink it, you can, but you know it's not good for you. It seems like kids these days are not drinking as much. Then I talked to some.
Yeah, they have
other
like, things.
They're like, well, I don't know who they're talking to because we're still partying, and it was like, it was an interesting conversation with like one or two people who just graduated college. I was like, are kids drinking? Because I hear they're not drinking anymore. It's like, I don't know. We still got really drunk and partied. So it's like, I don't know who they're talking to in these studies. So it's like, who knows, right? But I feel like, the studies suggest that fewer young people are drinking, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah. If we can have that impact on a future generation to make wise choices and decisions. And I think that's the biggest thing, is for us to be able to help them to make wise choices and decisions. Because to be frank and honest, as a parent, I have 5 boys and 1 girl. And, you go through this decision making in your mind, like, how do I help them make these decisions? And oftentimes as a parent, you're like, I'll guide them by basically telling them what I think they should do. And the reality is, the world is changing so quickly. The world is nothing like it was when I grew up as a kid. It's nothing like that. Yeah. So who the hell am I, really and truly, to tell my kids what decisions they should make given their current circumstances? What I need to focus on as a parent is helping them to make wise decisions, and helping them to know, how do I know when I've made a wise decision? Or how do I know when I've made a decision that I need to correct, right? And if they can become those stewards, and if we can empower them with that decision-making ability as early as possible, and encourage them to use that, and guiding them in that, as far as like, well, how did that turn out for you? What was the result? Is that where you're headed to? Are you liking where that result is going to take you in the future? Can you see where the result that you got from that might get you next year, 2 years from now, right? And is that where you want to be? And if that's not where you want to be, then you need to change something now. But rather than stepping in and saying, do this, do that, do this, do that, we have to help the kids be really good decision makers. And if they're choosing now to step away from alcohol, I would hope that that's out of their own accord, and not just because so many of us adults have told them that it's a horrible thing.
Well, I think they do a lot of things based on what they see us do versus what we say. Or so the experts in the book writers say. Should we move on to ultra-processed foods? I think we already kind of touched on that.
We did. And really, it's like ultra-processed foods, they lead to inflammation. It's quickly inflammable. It's a highly inflammable food when it's ultra-processed, because it basically strips out all of the nutrients. Minerals are nutrients. Vitamins are nutrients. And these things will have a tendency to have a cooling effect. You think about, like, you have a stick versus a rock. Which one's going to be harder to burn? Well, that's pretty obvious, right? Well, rock is mineral, and a stick, or you could say a plant of some sort, is more based on the processing, right? If you take all the minerals which are in that wood and you strip it out of it, you're left with this starchy carbon. It's going to be really quick to burn, really easy. It's going to be dry and depleted of all its moisture. That's what a ultra-processed food is. Oftentimes, ultra-processed foods, too, they'll have chemicals added into them. They'll have dyes. They'll have different flavorings. And so those are all things that the body doesn't really identify with. And so it leads to inflammation. The immune system's like, whoa, what is this? So it's going to tag it. Then we create an inflammatory response around it. And so we have inflammation throughout the body. So stay away from ultra-processed foods. Obviously, we talked about how the immune response, anytime you have an immune response, what does it require? It requires the adrenals, it requires the kidney, it requires cortisol, right? So if you're consuming ultra-processed foods, you're introducing all of these different chemicals, additives, flavorings, dyes that are going to initiate an immune response and stress cortisol production.
So when we're stressing out this cortisol production system, our immune system's not going to be there for us in the way that we want it to.
Starts to tank.
Yeah. Yep. And then you don't care about that until you actually do get sick. And then you really wish you didn't get sick. I realize now, I'm like, I try to hedge against getting sick, because it seems like if I get sick, you never know. It might be a quick recovery, or I might be fighting off crap for months. And that's my own thing. But it's like, I just don't want to get sick. When you get this production that you can't meet, well, you got to be productive, and productivity is important. And I work from home. I got a lot of stuff to do, edit videos to edit. When you don't feel like you can get out of bed, it's like, it's a rough thing, you know? So I feel like you take for granted getting sick, maybe as you get older. Anyway, all I know is that I like this line that I heard: food should be considered guilty until proven innocent. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like whether it's at the restaurant or at the gas station or anywhere, like you just don't ever assume. It's always guilty until proven innocent. And I don't want to make that,
Yeah, make you feel crazy. Can I put a caveat on that? Because I do like that statement. I really want my patients to have a healthy relationship with food. And I want them to realize that it's like, there is no bad food. Like, it's not about good and bad, right? It's about what it's going to do for me, right? If I pull up to the gas station, I have like 85, 87, 89, 91 octane, right? I can put all those different types of gas in my car. And I even can put a zero ethanol gas in my car, right? So I have all those options. Well, which of those is going to be best for me? Well, what do you choose? What do you think is going to be the best option? How well do you want your car to run? Is it a high-end vehicle? Are you treating yourself like a high-end sports car? We've used this analogy before. So what kind of gas, what kind of fuel would you put into your body based on that, right? So then, like you say, if you go to a gas station, the caveat is, if you're purchasing a food like at a gas station or a restaurant, I agree 100%. You have to assume there's going to be some problems here, right? It's guilty first until you can discover that it's innocent. If you're harvesting food, I mean, that's the best way to do it, right? Yeah. It's farm to table. If you're harvesting food, we don't want any, issue. I don't want any issue of people being like, well, I should only eat this food and I should only eat that food and this food. And, it's like, no, you actually should eat all of those foods. You should consume all of those foods because we're designed to do so. We're designed to eat of the plants of this earth, and we're designed to eat of the animals, and that's just how our bodies function, and that's how we support them in the maximally optimal way. So we want all foods to be seen as good. We just need to use them in wisdom and with proper prudence.
Was there one more about a low-carb diet that you wanted to bring up? Because I know it's kind of a big deal for some folks. They'd say, avoid all carbs.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We actually have talked about people who have done the carnivore diet and different things like that. And what we have, and I've said to you as well, there are certain people out there, and they're really big into these carnivore diets, or they're really big into avoiding all plants, but oftentimes they get to that point because they have certain underlying autoimmune diseases or illnesses, and they happen to find if they go to this really exclusive diet, it helps. It seems to benefit them. Well, it benefits them because they're not exposing themselves to all of the different compounds that their body has begun to tag as being pathogenic, right? So they've developed a variety of different maladaptive immune responses. Now, going on a specific diet for a short period of time, a low-carb diet can be very, very beneficial. I do think overall, minimizing carbs is actually really good overall, like long term. Especially highly processed, I could say eliminate highly processed carbs. But when we're talking about complex carbohydrate foods that have lots of carbs in them that you actually harvest, grow, find in the produce section, you should be able to eat that in high amounts without a lot of issue, right?
Can we go over some, tips to like regulate cortisol production?
Yes. Do I need to be quick?
Yeah,
we're getting there.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've mentioned this already. I think
you need
exercise.
To be quick. For the viewers out there, the listeners, we're not trying to be quick, but I think we want to hit on.
We were trying to keep it around 30, I think, for people too, so they keep their interest.
Exactly.
And everybody's interested out there right now. We can feel it.
If they're here 30 minutes in, they're interested.
They're interested. So things that are super beneficial, that are helpful for regulating cortisol in the body, things like exercise. We talked about meditation, mindfulness, yoga, acupuncture, tai chi, eating whole foods. Again, we've already discussed that and talked about that. And then limiting your stimulants. And this includes things like screen time, not just caffeine, right? But screen time, allowing yourself to maybe step away for a moment. This could be part of meditation. Step away from all of the busyness, all the jostling, all of the noise, and seeing if you can just get to a place for just 5-10 minutes where you're listening and the only thing you hear is your breath. And if you're outside, maybe you hear the birds, maybe you hear the crickets, right? But just begin to take in the environment around you and calm everything down. Come right back to that steady state where cortisol is at appropriate balance, and it's going to peak when it needs to peak, and it's going to drop when it needs to drop, so we can sleep, so that we can wake, so we can digest our foods, regulate our heart rhythms, and so that we can overall be metabolically well.
And obviously trying to get enough sleep is important. What about vitamin C?
Oh my gosh. I love vitamin C. So here's the interesting thing about vitamin C with regards to cortisol. Most animals in nature, they actually produce their own vitamin C. They make vitamin C. It's a stress hormone regulator. In our bodies, vitamin C gets stored in the adrenals. It's stored in the adrenals for times when it needs to produce cortisol to help the body to withstand stress. So we have storage of it, but we have to consume it. We have to consume it in order to store it there. If we're not consuming adequate amounts of vitamin C, either through foods or through a supplement, if we're not getting vitamin C at adequate amounts, then our stress ability to withstand or be fortified against stressors in our life is going to be significantly reduced. Which then, of course, we've already talked about this, but it's going to impact your immune responses. It's going to impact your heart. It's going to impact. So vitamin C is a very, very critical nutrient that everybody, in my opinion, should be getting at least 1,000 to 2,500 milligrams of vitamin C every single day.
So you think they should be supplementing with vitamin C? Based on what
ideally, if you can get it from kiwi, if you can get it from oranges, if you can get it from, there's actually a lot of vitamin C in potato. So potato, you can get it in white potato. You can also get it in yams. So there's a lot of places where you can get vitamin C. And then I would say, yes, I'm not a big fan of, unless you're medically being treated for something that you specifically want to change at this moment, I'm not a big fan of taking anything every single day, right? So I would say 2 to 4 times a week, make sure you're getting 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C in a supplement form.
Love it. What a great episode.
That was fun. Oh, good. And here we are. Thank you so much for being a part of the Be Well Now podcast, everyone.
Namaste.
Namaste.